Welcome back into the film room, guys. I'm your host, Erik Turner. As always, joined by my boys, Anthony Prohaska, Disguised Coverage, Kendall Mursky, of pretty much everything. He's honestly, Kendall is becoming Workhorse Part 2. He's really taking the reins here. He is, man. I'm glad to be back from vacation. The boys held it down while I was gone. Anthony, good to see you, brother. Welcome back into the film room.
Good to see you. You finally show your face after leaving us 2 weeks high and dry with no word, no communication. No, we're excited to have you back. You got some well-deserved time off, and you were in the most magical place on earth, which is Disney World. I'm very jealous. But yeah, we were able to hold it down. And, you know, it's nice that the Bills still did some moves to start this week to kind of welcome you back so that we had some stuff to talk about to lead off this film room, in addition to kind of going over some stuff that happened last week.
Yeah, and as Anthony said, we're going to talk about some of the free agent additions on top of the guys that Anthony and Kendall broke down last couple of weeks. So I am glad to be back, Kendall. And I mean, let the people that are tuning in right now, kind of getting settled in, getting their drink right after dinner to join us in the film room. Let them know who we're going to be talking about today, the new additions this week.
Oh God, we got a lot. We got Case Keenum, we got Matt Barkley, we got Jamison Crowder, we got the two guys who took 2 years off when Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson. And then who's the last one that I'm missing? I'm missing.
We got
someone.
Jamison Crowder, Von Miller, of course.
Von Miller, of course. I can't believe I just forgot Von Miller.
Because
we've talked so much about Von Miller, man. But no, we need to break down the film on Von Miller. There's people out there, obviously, that are concerned about the age, concerned about the money. Hopefully, we can put some of that to bed. He's around the same age as Chandler Jones. He's getting about the same money as Chandler Jones. We were all hoping we'd get Chandler Jones. So, yeah, I hope we can put some of that to bed. Yeah, Erik, nice to have you back. My computer needs a rest from all the huddle, so I'm happy to have you back for that.
No, I'm glad to be back. And I mean, you know, the first day I got back is when the Bills signed Von Miller. So, of course, as soon as I got off the plane, and again, you got to keep in mind, I'm traveling with my wife and 2 toddlers. First family trip. So I was exhausted. But as soon as I got into bed, grabbed my laptop, and I got Von Miller video started. Be on the lookout for that later in the week. I got about 28 minutes worth of film of Von Miller cut up from his season with the Broncos and the Rams. And I'll be diving into that. And we're going to have a couple of special guests on that episode. Again, stay tuned for that later in the week. But we are going to cover some of Von Miller today, a couple plays by him. But let's start off with some of the additions on the offensive side of the ball, starting with the trade the Bills made for quarterback Case Keenum with the Browns for a 7th-round pick. I want to get your guys' thoughts. Anthony, starting with you. What traits do you look for in a quarterback? And obviously, what traits do you like in Case Keenum and having him sit behind Josh Allen this year?
I think it's cool if you can get someone who matches the traits of your starter. So that way it's like as seamless of a transition as possible. But those things are few and far between. Like you can see the benefits of it. Like look at, you know, Tyler Huntley taking over for Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. It was kind of like, oh, we got this guy who can continue to run like, you know, QB bash and all this kind of stuff and play in that similar world. But it's tough when you have those upper echelon QBs. It's hard to find guys who can mimic that type of player, especially someone like Josh Allen, who's a unicorn. Like, how do you get someone who mimics that skill set? I guess they came kind of semi-close with a guy like Trubisky. So it's cool if you can have that. But above all, I prefer give me someone who is good for the QB room, somebody who's heady, somebody who can help with the game planning and the film prep piece. I want someone in that QB room as the backup that's almost like an extension of the coaching staff. Give me like Alex Smith with the young Patrick Mahomes. Give me Davis Webb with what he was with the Bills. Give me somebody who can help from the mental side of things, who's good with helping, again, everything when it comes to the off the field stuff and who's got that right mind. And then someone who, if in a pinch, you know, can execute to a decent degree on the field. That's why I really like the Case Keenum move. In addition to him having some rapport with Stephon Diggs from their time in Minnesota, he's got a good head, you know, between his shoulders. He's a good teammate. He's a smart dude. And, you know, if you're in a bind, in a pinch, he can hold down the fort for a couple weeks and even potentially get you some wins. I mean, not that the team was put on his back, but he took a team to the NFC Championship several years ago, and combine that with what he's got going on between the years. That's the kind of thing I look for in a backup QB.
Kendall, what about you, man? What traits are you looking for in a backup quarterback? And what do you think I know he didn't play all too much last year in Cleveland, but what do you think Case Keenum brings to the Bills offense if he is needed for a stretch of a few games?
I mean, I think it's a lot of the things that Ant just said. Like you'd hope that you get someone that can somewhat match those traits of Josh Allen, but it's not going to happen. It's too difficult.
No.
Yeah, we got that watered down Josh Allen and Mitch Trubisky, and that was a luxury, man. Like at $2.5 million, that was a luxury. So that's not going to happen every offseason. And to think about getting Case Keenum for a 7th round draft pick, a guy that probably won't be making the roster if we actually used that pick to go get a rookie. If we had to use a 5th round pick on a quarterback, who's to say that quarterback is going to be as reliable as Case Keenum is going to be? So that's really the word for me. It's reliability and dependability when we're talking about a backup quarterback. You want someone who's going to come in and he's going to keep this ship rocking. He's not going to completely sink the ship. He's not going to make you go like 1-3 or 0-4 in a 4-game stretch.
Don't crash the boat.
He's not going to crash the boat. Hopefully not. But that's the thing. You hope for someone who has experience. He's been there before. Like you said, he played in that NFC championship game with Stephon Diggs. Might have had something to do with it. But you want someone who has game managing qualities. Someone who's going to keep that ship alive and just keep it rolling, because hey, if Josh Allen gets dinged up at the tail end of a game or something like that, if it's like really just short-lived, then can he keep the lead? Can he keep the game managing qualities alive and just hand the football off, pass short dink and dunk plays just to keep the chains moving, stuff like that? The cerebral side to things and what he's going to do for Josh Allen in the quarterback room is probably what's most important. And then the fact that he's not going to just completely ruin this season if he has to be in the game, I think is a huge plus.
Yeah, I'll echo some of the things that you guys talked about and some of the comments from the chat room. He's tough. He's smart, gutsy. His mental toughness, it's one of the most important traits for a backup quarterback, that mental toughness. He's been a starter. He's been a backup. He's come in a game when a quarterback gets hurt. He's gone through all of those roles as a backup player that you need to be experienced in as a number 2 at any given moment, could be in the game, especially when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen who plays the way he does. So he was an undrafted guy. So, the Bills regime loves those guys that are counted out and that have to earn their way in the league. And if we want to talk about the schematic side of things and the offenses he's played for, the coaches he played for, some of the teams he's played for, the Texans, the Rams, the Vikings, the Broncos, the Browns. If you look at all of those schemes, a lot of those coaches come from the zone running scheme. You're like, okay, Erik, what the heck does that have to do with the quarterback position? If he's a number 2, he's probably going to be, asked to hand off a little more than Josh Allen and not have to run that spread offense as often as Josh Allen will be doing this coming year. But there's been a lot of moves made in the coaching staff and with the personnel in the direction of zone running, which this is a hot topic, and it's going to be until we see the offense with Cromer at the helm with that offensive line and what parts they add there, even in the draft. I think that in those type of schemes, when there's a lot of zone run, a lot of those outside zone runs, you have what? You have play action and you have bootlegs. And the one thing that always popped on Keenum's film is his ability to run those play action bootlegs, those half rolls, those full rolls, those 3-level passing concepts, throwing the ball on the run accurately. And that's something that's always been on film with him, those play action passes. And I think that, if he were to get some playing time because Josh Allen goes down for a few games, I think that the Bills offense, again, maybe wait and see approach. I think they will have some of those things in the offense as base concepts this year with Cromer and some of the staff, and obviously a new coordinator in Ken Dorsey, and we'll see where that goes going forward. So next quarterback, Matt Barkley. Not really surprising move with him coming back, but he's probably, as everyone has talked about, he's kind of probably going to be that Davis Webb type, coach on the field, coach on the sideline type guy, which Josh Allen maybe doesn't need that anymore, Kendall. But I think this year, having, as I just said, a new offensive coordinator, Joe Brady coming as a quarterback's coach. When if you look at his resume, guys, Joe Brady, over the years, he started off as a linebackers coach at William & Mary, graduate assistant at Penn State, offensive assistant with the Saints, LSU. He was a passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach. He's getting a lot of credit for the way Joe Burrow played that year, but really he wasn't all too hands-on with the quarterbacks all that often. And then, of course, now he's a quarterbacks coach. It will help to have a Matt Barkley in the film room on the sideline with a new coordinator, with a new QB coach in Joe Brady. What are your thoughts on bringing Matt Barkley back?
Yeah, I think you laid it out really well by talking about what he's going to do. Obviously not on the field. We're not expecting him to play a big part of what's happening on the field, that Davis Webb type of role. And he's someone who bounced around on like 3 teams last year. He's someone that I think we can all expect he's not going to get poached from the practice squad when he's barely keeping himself on practice squads last year for 3 separate teams. So I think that's a huge component of it. Yeah, it's not necessarily needed for Josh Allen, but you lay out a good argument with the fact that we're in a transition period with our offense. It could be nice to have that kind of that bridge from the coaching room onto Josh Allen, and someone that can kind of like talk him through some things, just communication wise, like what everyone's expecting from one another. And then on another layer, what he means to this locker room. Like, Brandon Beane put out so much respect for him last year. Like, before going into that press conference, like, he had to talk to Matt Barkley about the release and made sure he delayed that press conference. And then after that even happened, like, all the Bills players were talking about like how much he meant to the players and the family of all of the players, and just how close knit Matt Barkley's family made the Buffalo Bills players' families, and how it made a real familial feeling to the entire locker room. So I think that can't be undervalued. Obviously it isn't an on the field impact, but maybe we'll squeeze a little bit of that onto the field a little bit.
Yeah.
Thoughts on Barkley, Anthony?
I second that notion. I think it, especially too, we were talking a little bit earlier on Dorsey and what the offense might look like offline before we got on. And I think you had another person who has experience working with Ken Dorsey and experience working with Josh Allen. I think Kendall's word there of bridge is something that's nice. It's another calming presence and good mind who has experience with this staff and this team. And we know how he functions in the locker room. And he's a guy who he knows what his role is. He knows what his job is. And I'm all for, again, more people in that quarterback room that aren't going to see the field, hopefully, knock on wood, as people in the chat are already worried about, making sure Josh Allen plays every game. I'm all for more people coming into that room who are good football minds and who are good dudes. And, people are making jokes about him and Allen being friends. I also think that's a valuable piece, too. Like, it's a nice thing, whether you're a kid in school or an adult with a job, like, or on a team. It's nice when you have like a really good friend or like a best friend or something like in the trenches with you and whatever you're doing. And if it's another piece that'll keep Josh Allen, calm and comfortable, and it's some dude who he's buddies with who can also come over his house and they can chop it up and also watch some film together, like anything that helps like that camaraderie and culture piece, I think is a good move. And Barkley ticks all those boxes.
No doubt about it. Yeah. So the Bills, again, surrounding Josh Allen with a few different pieces in the quarterback room, but some of them being familiar and Matt Barkley, and then Case Keenum coming over in that trade. So I think they will add some value as backups and as second set and third set of eyes and ears on the field. So on the field, most of us assume that Jamison Crowder, who the Bills signed with the Bills for a 1-year contract up to $4 million. I want to get your guys' thoughts on him. I'll start with, I thought overall it was a smart move by Beane. Beasley's gone, and as you talked about, maybe the offense is going to shift a little bit in their philosophy and their personnel groupings and some of their concepts, but it seemed like Beane liked having that kind of shifty, smaller slot guy, which obviously is why he signed Crowder, another possession type slot receiver. I think people automatically assume that he is a 1-for-1 for Cole Beasley, given their stature and their play over the years. But I don't know, man. I think it's a smart move, but I do think that, Beasley's still better. And I think if you compare Beasley to McKenzie and Crowder, I still think I prefer Beasley even at his contract number. But I understand that now that the contracts have to kind of be shifted around because of, that splash signing of Von Miller and others on the defensive side of the ball. But I do like, some of how he reads leverage of defenses and defenders, and he finds voids. He is very similar in that respect to Beasley, where he's going to eat up zone coverages, guys, right? He's going to find those voids in those coverages, whether it's two or single high or two high sets. Matt, appreciate that super chat there. Thanks for joining us in the film room. It's good to be back in here with the boys, breaking down some film. We're going to get to some film here in a second, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on Crowder. I'll start with you this time, Anthony, because I know you really love Crowder.
Come on, don't do that, because then it makes it seem like more is going to make me like seem like I love him. I just think I don't know what I think. I think it all stems with people's dislike of Cole Beasley. There just seems to be this world where every small receiver can just do what Cole Beasley does. Like when the Bills brought back McKenzie, it was like, oh, we don't need Beasley. Like he can do we got to stop because we got a super chat. We all know the rules. Ned has been killing it. Erik, I know you were gone the last 2 weeks, as you mentioned. Ned was riding with Kendall and I in the film room and in disguise coverage, asking tremendous questions, like really thought-provoking good stuff, and killing it with the super chats as well. And Ned says, love me some bees and your show. Surprised that Crowder's stats / game, his receptions, his yards, and touchdowns per game, best Cole Beasley's. Persistent right leg injuries for Crowder, though, something to be concerned about. Thanks. Really good thoughts there, Ned. You know, I know we saw like several tweets that put up the raw numbers for that compared Beasley and Crowder over the last several years. And yeah, they did stack up like pretty close for them. I think what the thing for me with Crowder is, again, you're comparing him to the guy he's like quote unquote replacing. I like some of the things Crowder does. And Erik, you know, you mentioned it. I like how he's able to read zone. I like how he leverages space. I like how he can run those option routes and understand where the break in coverage is and where's the window, where's the hole, where do I sit, when do I sit, how, like that stuff is good. But he lacks a suddenness that Cole Beasley has. Cole Beasley has some bite and some snap and some sharpness to his routes. And that's against man and zone. I posted several clips towards the back end of the year because there seems to be this prevailing thought. Apparently it's been said on the radio and all these other places that Cole Beasley can't beat man coverage. He was only good against zone. There's plenty of clips, even when he was banged up, but especially when he was healthy, of Cole Beasley just juking guys out of their shoes in man coverage and separating. Cole Beasley was 9th in average separation last year at 3.9. He had a 70% reception percentage versus man coverage and an 81.6 reception percentage versus zone. Not that that's the end all be all, but if you want to, by comparison, Devontae Adams's reception percentage in man was 70.7. So Cole is right in line with the best receiver in the entire NFL. I feel like people are devaluing what Cole Beasley did and then see these other smaller stature receivers and think whether it's McKenzie, Crowder, any of these guys can just easily replace his production. And then you see, to Ned's point, like he said, I was surprised that, you know, Crowder had some numbers that kind of bested Cole Beasley's. I mean, Cole Beasley had some all-pro votes a couple years ago. But what's interesting is I think people are taking those numbers and then are like, well, Crowder's the better guy, or Crowder can easily do what Cole Beasley does. Right. And he can do some similar things. But like you said and led off with, I prefer Cole Beasley to Crowder based on, you know, his overall route running, the sharp, the snap that he has, the suddenness, the decisiveness in his routes. Crowder's a nice move, and I think it all kind of hedges the bets. Like we talked about, we know what Brandon Beam wants to do. Fill in the holes going up to the draft, so that way if the board falls right, you can take whatever you want, but you're not pressed to go in a certain direction. Crowder gives the Bills the opportunity that if a good receiver that they want falls to them, they can take him. And if not, cool, they can go somewhere else because they now have depth at the wide receiver position combined with some functionality.
Yeah, and Kendall, you know, I love Anthony's point about the man coverage because I totally agree. You know, Cole Beasley is going to create more separation against man coverage than Jamison Crowder does. Now, you can argue the degree of separation. Maybe it's not all that much, but you can see it on tape and you can see some of the stats, whether it's next gen or even some of these stats from PFF. But I do think that when Crowder catches the ball, he's slightly different. And I know like right now we're looking at man coverage and some of the yak per reception here for Beasley, some of the Bills and some of the Jets guys. And you can see Beasley and Crowder here. But I think when Crowder catches the ball, his frame and his body and his ability, it does. I think he's a little bit better in Cole in that regard. More times than not, Cole is going to create that separation, catch the ball, and get a couple yards or a few yards, whereas Crowder is not going to have as much separation. He may have a few more contested balls and thrown his way, but he's able to break a couple more tackles just because, strictly because of his body stature and his size. So
he's got more juice after the catch than Cole. Yeah.
Sure. And I want to get Kendall's thoughts on Crowder. How do you handle him, McKenzie, and we assume a pretty good pick at wide receiver in this draft?
Well, at the end of the day, it's going to be a competition. Like, I don't think signing Crowder means that McKenzie lost the job. I don't think signing Crowder means we're not going to draft a wide receiver in the early rounds. I think it's a really great insurance value signing where we talk about it every year. It gives Bean flexibility to draft best player available, regardless of position. And if that best player is a wide receiver, he might just go ahead and take one. And if that happens, then it's going to be a three-way battle for wide receiver 3. And I don't think Jamison Crowder necessarily has like the inside track for it just because he's making the most money or anything like that. I think it's always a competition in Buffalo, and they're going to see who wins it on the field. Exactly. So I think, and honestly, I said it's a three-way competition. In a way, it's between all three of those guys. It's Crowder, it's McKenzie, it's whatever draft pick, and even OJ Howard, because they're competing to keep that second tight end off the field.
Yeah, no doubt about it. When you bring in a guy like OJ Howard, much like Crowder, trying to, turn around his career, get that next contract, these guys want to be on the field. That's why they joined the Bills. They want the ball. Right. They want to play with Josh Allen and what he brings. So those personnel groupings, again, it's going to be fluid. New offensive coordinator. We're going to talk about that the entire offseason, especially through the draft and into camp. So it better be a competition, and maybe it comes down to, a week-to-week league where, hey, this defense, the Dolphins are playing a lot of man coverage. Let's play McKenzie. But one thing I do want to talk about real quick is the layer that McKenzie brings, because obviously they brought him back again. And yes, he has special teams abilities, but I think it's time for them, since they committed to him again, it's time to weave his role into the offense, because for years now, he's been considered that gadget guy. All of us call him this gadget guy. He's never really caught on as that slot guy, but he's also never really caught on or was given a chance to be that slot guy. Right. And so more opportunities, a bigger sample size at slot receiver, at wide receiver would be nice to see. But more importantly, let's eliminate that gadget, association with him, because all the offenses run jet action, run those jet sweeps, run those orbit reverses. All the good offenses have that eye candy. I don't think it's a gadget role anymore. The top offenses have it. And if Cromer has his hands on this offense, especially in the run game, he's going to incorporate and weave, and I assume, that McKenzie role into the offense. And I think it'll only help the Bills run game, as we saw it did last year. And that, again, adding him into the backfield was a new dimension that Dable did last year. Who knows what they can do with that if they don't get their third down running back. Because I don't know, even though they signed Duke Johnson, anyone want to talk about him real quick before we get into the film?
Duke Johnson?
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, well, he went to the U, and I feel like a lot of people, and I'm wearing orange tonight. Hey, look at that. So everybody knows I love my Miami guys. I think there was some talk with it, including in our group DMs, about like how much of a drop off it was from JD McKissic to Duke Johnson, and what the player is and what the role is. And I think Duke is a very capable, running back. He came in legitimately kind of balled out for Miami at the end of the year last year.
Yeah, he did.
But you're looking for somebody who can live in that traitsy or niche type of role that the Bills currently don't have. He is a legitimate receiving option coming out of the backfield in a variety of ways. He's a better runner in between the tackles than JD McKissic is.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a better receiver or route runner than JD McKissic, but he still offers you some of that world and some of that level, especially when paired with Devin Singletary. He does things that Devin Singletary does not. And he's still got some juice in the wheels. He was never the biggest, burner, but he's quick. He can move. He can run the ball too. And I think that's a good piece too. Like, if he's going to function in this offense, I'm more confident. If anything happens to Singletary, knock on wood, Duke Johnson can carry the ball a little bit for you, more so than JD McKissic has, and offer you some threat in between the tackles in addition to his receiving ability. So for me, I was very happy with McKissic. I think it is a bit of a step down from McKissic, but not marginal and not to the point where it's like, oh man, this is terrible. I actually think it was like a nice, not to be, I feel like this is going to sound disrespectful, but like a nice fallback plan or a nice recovery. Like, okay, you didn't end up with this guy. This is a nice option. He can still do some things, and he offers you a dynamic that the Bills currently do not have. What he's able to do in the pass game, Devin Singletary has not shown the aptitude for, and neither has Zach Moss. He's good on third down. He knows his role. He knows his responsibility, and he's carried the mail for several teams on first, second, and third down. So I thought it was a good.
Kendall, you had some quick thoughts on Duke Johnson?
My main thing is I think he offers more creativity with the ball in his hands than McKissic. I think McKissic is going to get open in a lot more creative ways, and he's going to get open just more efficiently. But what Duke Johnson doesn't offer in that way, in like the route running guard and what he can do as a receiving back, he can still do maybe a step back. But what he doesn't offer you there, he'll offer more as a runner, like Ant was saying, and I think that's a huge part to it. And I don't think he's as much of a tendency giveaway as J.D. McKissic was. I had the stats somewhere. I'd have to flip through my notebook. But I think it was like 67% of the time that J.D. McKissic was on the field last year was a passing play. And I would have to double check, and I don't know this for sure. But I feel like Duke Johnson offers more as a runner. He's not a dead giveaway in terms of tendencies. And how is he as a pass blocker?
Good enough. Like, I think I've seen him more in third down from a route running perspective and a get the ball perspective than he is from a pass blocking perspective. But you don't survive this long in the NFL in the role and world that he's living in if you can't hold your own when it comes to pass protection. And again, combine that with like his just veteran status. Like, he did it in Miami. He's done it here for multiple teams. Like, he's not I'm not going to sit here and say he's one of the best third down, pass blockers for running backs in the league, but he's not someone that you're worrying about. He's not someone where you're like, does he have that piece into his game? He can hold his own, and he's not a liability whatsoever.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to dive into his film, so I definitely want to take a look at that before I make too many assumptions about his game. Carl, appreciate the super chat there. He says, bring on the draft. I think this would be great, and he lists first round pick at 25, Trevor Penning. Interesting. Second would be Khair Elam at Florida, Tariq Woolen at cornerback in round 3. Obviously the big leg.
Hunter round 4.
Hunter, yeah. So yeah, good mock draft there. Appreciate Carl stopping in, dropping your mock draft in there, and we'll definitely. I'm sure all of the podcasts on our network will be doing their fair share of mock drafts over the next couple of weeks here, leading into the draft. And spoiler alert, we're going to have some guys on hand, on the ground at the draft, next month. So it'll be fun to be reporting from there. So, Carl, appreciate you stopping in there, buddy. You got another comment here from your boy. Duke Johnson is greater than D-Hop below the clown. Okay, I'm not understanding that.
I'm not following
reference
either, but I know your boy Lettuce is all in on Carl's mock draft because he loves Matt Araiza in the 4th round. He's been slamming that home on the air.
Punters make a difference, man. Punters are people too.
Yeah, why not swing the field? I'm all for it. I'm all in, especially if there's, by the time we get to the mid rounds, hey, maybe the roster is filled quite well, and maybe that is the biggest need at the position. So,
or if you just trade all of your back end picks for more third and second round picks because it's super easy, then you can just load up with day 2 picks and then you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, come on, we've all played Madden, right? I mean, that's so easy.
That's hard to even do on Madden. It's hard to package all your picks and end up with more like second and round picks and third round. It's hard. Even Madden is like, nope.
With that said, guys, let's get into some of the film. So we're going to be taking a look at Jordan Phillips, Shaq Lawson, and of course, the big splash signing in Von Miller. We're going to start with Jordan Phillips, obviously a guy that is familiar to a lot of Bills fans, and left a few years ago to go to Arizona and really got his heyday there. But a guy much like Shaq Lawson and some of these other signings that wants to be in Buffalo, guys, and that is a weird feeling, first of all, to have, whether it's a guy like Jordan Phillips, a depth player like Shaq Lawson, or even, those big guys, those big fish like Von Miller, the Jamison Crowders, the OJ Howards that want to come here and get that next contract. It's a weird feeling to have, but it's really a credence to the culture and I know that's a word that a lot of people do not believe in.
Hmm.
It's the culture that, McDermott and Bean have built in Buffalo. So I want to get your thoughts real quick on Jordan Phillips wanting to come back to Buffalo after we kind of tune into this little clip from his presser, because I thought it was very telling. To listen in, guys.
Me and Brandon talked, and it just seemed like the better opportunity for me to leave at the time. And it served its purpose, but my end goal was always to come back here, and I'm happy it worked out. It's just the family aspect here that really draws me to this. It's you're playing for more than money here, and that's just nice. Everybody has each other's backs. People's kids grow up together. It's just a nice atmosphere to be here.
And I love that that little clip from the presser for a few reasons. Obviously, I said he wants to come back to Buffalo, and that's the culture that the Bills have created. And I think it's so important that they have created that because of the location of Buffalo in Western New York. Not many things to do really in the immediate area. So, and then you have that college-like atmosphere at games, the tailgating. It's really, awesome that the regime was able to maximize that and almost flip it and turn it around, right, guys? And now it's become a selling point. Hey, if you're all about business, you're all about being your best self, the best version of yourself, come to Buffalo, come back to Buffalo in Phillips and Shaq Lawson's case. So I want to get your thoughts on Jordan Phillips to start. Where are you playing him? What does the rotation look like? What he brings to the Bills defense now in 2022?
Sure. Real quick, I want to pull up Jessica. Thank you very much for the super chat.
Thank you.
She asks if Lawson and Phillips can be better than in 2019. Jessica, you're in luck because that's something we're going to talk about as we progress through this episode, as we go through these clips. So it's like you're peeking into our outline a little bit. You're going to get that question answered, but thank you so much for being here and thank you for the super chat. What's really interesting with Phillips, I think a lot of people, when he left, he left on such a high with the sack numbers and he got paid, it kind of served its purpose, I guess, like he said. But his seasons with the Cardinals were not ideal for him. He had knee and hamstring injuries. He started this past season on injured reserve. All in all, these are some stats from his 2 seasons with the Cardinals. Only 18 total games, 9 in each season, 5 sacks, 24 pressures, 22 tackles, 22 stops. He had a 26.1% snap rate in 2021, a 24% snap rate in 2020, which was much different than his last season with the Bills in 2019, where he had a 52.1% snap rate with the Bills. And, some of the things we were talking about offline, before we got into this episode was how he was playing in Arizona. With the Bills, you got that 4-3, you got the 4 defensive linemen. He was playing more on the interior as like a 1 tech and 3 tech and doing those types of things. In the Cardinals defense, which is a 3-4, I thought he was playing a little bit out of scheme up front, having to take on more 2-gapping responsibilities and having to more of an lending himself to like an occupying space type of role. Combine that with the injuries that he had. Erik, you mentioned it offline, those soft tissue injuries, which are terrible for you can't do anything. You're going to end up maybe putting on weight. You can't get cardio in. You can't get work in. But you're still seeing him maintain some of the ability that he had in Buffalo. He's got those active hands. I'm playing him at 3 tech. I think what's nice is I want to read the comment. Duke is the guy O'Brien gave Hopkins away for. And yes, I love Eddie Punk for mock draft. It
all makes sense now.
Well done. I'll take the super chat to bring the comment back. So thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, it all adds up. It all comes full circle. As we're going to dive into the film, I'll explain more there of his abilities and stuff. But where I'm playing him, he's still a big bodied guy. I'm playing him more at the 1 tech. I think what's nice is he does have some versatility and can pop into the 3, much like Settle is, at a 3 tech and can pop into the 1. But given the way the defensive tackle grouping is constructed, I'm thinking Ed and Daquan are the starters. And then I'm having Phillips as that primary backup right now for Daquan Jones and Settle in that world with Ed Oliver. So I'm playing him at 1, although he can pop over to some 3 every now and again, even get at some nose. But I'm putting him at the 1 tech, kind of like where he is on this play that we're about to show right now.
Yeah, Kendall, one of the things that Brandy Bean talked about on One Bills Live yesterday was adding some beef up the middle to help, not just the linebackers, but really Ed Oliver. He's more of a speed, explosive type guy, up the field penetrator at 3 technique. So adding, Jordan Phillips, Daquan Jones, Tim Settle, and some other guys, it was to add some beef up front to anchor down, whether it's versus the run or, when they need to push the pocket up the middle. So what do you think about, Jordan Phillips, what he brings back to the Bills defense, and how it will affect other guys to the left and right of him and behind him?
Yeah, it's very interesting thinking about bringing him back and what he was for the Bills. I mean, what he is he's just a big dude that penetrates and disrupts the offensive line. You see someone at that size, you'd assume he's a space eater and that he would work in a 3-4 as a nose tackle and all that stuff, but he just penetrates, man. He shoots through gaps and he uses his power to his advantage time and time again. If it's the run or the pass, he likes to be the aggressor and he likes to get downhill. He likes to push you backwards. He doesn't really like to occupy space. However, that could work to Ed Oliver's advantage because he wins his fair share of one-on-ones via push. If if he's not doing anything magical with his hands or anything, he might not be getting to the quarterback, but he's still winning his one-on-one battle in a sense that he's reestablishing the line of scrimmage. If he's pass rushing, he's pushing his guy back a couple of yards, and it's still getting some of that pocket push. So it kind of puts the idea into offensive minds. Should we double this guy? Because he's automatically getting some push in 1v1s. Maybe we should double him, and then it gives Oliver that opening in his 1v1. So that's kind of the intriguing part to adding him back into the mix. It gives that catch-22 for offensive minds. Who are we going to double here? Because we're going to lose no matter who we choose.
Right. Anthony, quick breakdown on this play. It's something that we saw in his film in Buffalo, his anticipation of the snap, and it happened inside in the low red zone like this several times where he was jumping snaps. The one time he got called for offsides when really he was on point with his jump. And again, when you add that size, that strength to the anticipation of the snap like this, it can be pretty damaging to the offensive line.
That's a huge piece, Erik. This is a high leverage scenario. Like, you have to be on point to know that he's that clocked in and clued in to try and use that get off and jump the snap. He did it several times in this game. He's done it several times on film. And this is against a well-coached offensive line, a good guard, number 70 there in TJ Lang, who he just absolutely blows up and to get into the backfield here to get to Aaron Jones. I also love this play too because Simmons hits Jones in the backfield and Jones still manages to score. That's just how the Cardinals defense, how the Cardinals defense works. But this is what you saw a lot from Phillips. That penetration, that quickness, that good get off, that ability to, I mentioned it offline. PFF has him listed last year at 6'6", 341 pounds, and when you see him play, you kind of could see where maybe he is really, 341 pounds. Erik, you called it earlier, with the soft tissue injuries he had, maybe those added some weight. You can't really get in the cardio shape when you got a busted wheel. You have to rest that wheel a little bit. But what's nice is even at a heavier weight, you still see the burst. You still see the quick get off. You still see his ability to play with leverage and make things happen. And what's nice with that piece is, again, when you're popping somebody in from a rotational aspect, which is what we're going to see on this defensive line, having that ability to pop someone in, let them go and make a play because they're fresh, because they understand the situation, because they have the skill set and the ability to do so, is a really nice piece and a nice advantage. And, again, Jones ends up scoring on this one, but not for a lack of effort by Phillips, who almost derails this entire play from the get-go right in the backfield by blowing up a really good guard and almost taking out a back.
Yeah, I like what he's going to bring to defense. And again, it'll probably be in that rotational type role. But when you think about the guys that they added, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's inside or outside, but specifically Von Miller, they're going to have a guy that can win the edge, can win the outside hip of a tackle, can bend around the arc and force the quarterback to do one of two things, either step up into the pocket or look to escape the pocket. And what the Bills are hoping is that he is that disruptor or closer, one or the other. But if he is not the closer, he is definitely going to be the disruptor, and he's going to force that quarterback to climb into the top, up into the pocket. And hopefully those guys that they signed inside, the Jordan Phillips, the Daquan Jones, the Tim Settles, the guys that can also go ahead and push the pocket from the middle, they're hoping that those guys can push the pocket right into the lap of the quarterback, and then that's when they can eat on that side of the ball. But yeah, I mean, I like that they're bringing him back. I like that, he's going to be that role player, and now he's a veteran, and hopefully his soft tissue injuries aren't that big a deal for him. But I just think he's going to add a lot. And the other thing that we didn't talk about is something we're going to talk about with Von Miller and some of the younger guys that need to improve on is the twist and stunt game, right? Kendall, like Jordan Phillips is a big guy, but he's got some pretty quick feet. And when we saw, some of those twists and games in 2019 with Shaq Lawson and Lorenzo Alexander, Jordan Phillips was usually that defensive tackle that was running those, those games, those 2 and 3 man games, because he can run around the edge and turn the corner there. So talk about what he adds in that regard.
Yeah, I think it's funny when you talk about those twists and stunts, people kind of think about the advantage that it's going to give that edge rusher as he slants inside. That's not always the case. Sometimes it gives the advantage to the interior guy as he loops around the edge. And because those edge defenders are so well respected, those offensive tackles, they get kind of tunnel visioned onto those edge players, and they stay locked on him, and it just opens up that edge to the defensive tackle looping around. And I think that's a really well put point with Jordan Phillips, because that was something that worked for the Bills back when Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips were on the Bills together in 2019. They did a lot of twists and stunts. And like you said, Jordan Phillips is pretty fleet of foot for his size, and it works to his advantage, especially in those scenarios. So definitely excited to see how they decide to implement those moving forward. Curious how much they'll do it with different personnel guys. Like if it's going to be Jordan Phillips, if it's going to be Ed Oliver, if it's going to be Tim Settle, who it is on the interior that they're going to feel most comfortable in those twists and stunts.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. Because again, they've added so many different guys that can get after the quarterback, and that's the funny thing is, like, all offseason, well, thus far, we've talked about, hey, let's add some beef to stop the run so that the linebackers don't have to two gap. You don't see Edmonds, keep him clean. But it's funny when Bean talks about these guys and the beef that they added, it's really, hey, it's to help Ed Oliver, and it's to help, attack the quarterback. So it's interesting to hear Bean talk about it in that regard. So
I mean, he's been talking about getting after the quarterback since getting here. He has prioritized defensive line pass rush over pass coverage for like 5 years now. So it's funny to hear it, but it's almost not shocking at this point.
No doubt about it, man. So yeah, it looks like some of the other film, Anthony, did not show up. So I'm not able to, hold on, let's see here. I see where it is now. All right, here we go. Here's your next play here. You want to go ahead and break it down from the end zone angle here, Ant?
Oh, you're on mute, buddy. I got you.
And now I'm muted. This is just fantastic. I was trying to troubleshoot and figure. I was like, no, dude, I know it's there. So yeah, this is another, again, like we mentioned with that first clip, high leverage scenario, low red zone at one tech again, this time on the left side against a different guy. And you're just seeing more example of the penetration, the get off, the quick step. This time it ends up being play action. This one is nice because you see the shed, you see the hands, and he gets into the backfield, harasses Aaron Rodgers. This is a piece that I really like because, I watched multiple games for Jordan Phillips, and when he was in the pass rush, like when he was in pass rush mode, you weren't seeing a lot of moves. You weren't seeing a lot of plan. You weren't seeing a ton of technique. Now, whether it was because that's what was being asked of him in this defense or that's what his role was on an individual play, a lot of his pass rush snaps were just trying to get lower than his man, driving his man back, getting the hands kind of right into the pecs and up into the collarbone a little bit and trying to drive and hold. So you didn't see too much from him from a pass rush perspective. This one's nice. Again, he might be attacking like it's going to be a run. You get the play action, but you see him adjust. You see him with eyes in the backfield as he's got hands on his man. Even as you started to go in slow motion there, you saw how quick his get off is. He's almost across the line of scrimmage before the ball is fully into Aaron Rodgers' hands. And then you see him diagnose what's going on and his ability to read and react and come into a different mode and a different mindset. And then this one too, again, just penetration, quickness, penetration, get off, havoc causing plays, chaos in the backfield, that type of, Erik, you talked about it, that, who's the chaos creator and who's going to clean up. And it doesn't matter who cleans up, because at the end of the day, that means the defense is winning. This is Jordan Phillips doing his 111. Then it might not be the sexy stuff, and it might not be double-digit sacks again and all these pressures, but this is a win. This is also almost a hell of a catch by Mercedes Lewis in the back of the end zone for the Packers, that one-handed catch.
Yeah, that was close.
But that's a win for the defense, and it's because of the chaos that he creates off the snap, right off rip, just from his jump, the penetration, gets into the backfield, makes Rodgers have to get rid of it before he wants to, and that's what he's going to offer you consistently. It's not going to be flashy. It's not going to be sexy. And I don't think it's something, again, we saw with the contract he signed for and how he came back, and it's nice that he did, but it's not like the market was booming for him. But he comes back to a place he knows. He gets used by a coaching staff who knows how to use him, and you're working a guy in a rotation who's got niche abilities that can function in high leverage scenarios, and it's a good rotational piece to have.
Yeah, and let's change gears here. We're going to go to Shaq Lawson now, Kendall. I want to get your thoughts on Lawson. I'm happy that he's back. It's something that Kevin Massari had, reported several weeks back, and it was just, there was a few hangups in that agreement, but it's good to see Jordan Phillips bully him into signing his contract at his press conference. So but I like that he's, again, wants to be back in Buffalo. He's slightly different from the perspective of, like, he is, I'd say he's strictly a run defender, and a damn good one. He's been one of the best big defensive ends in the league for a few years. He just, after he left Buffalo, he was thrown into a different scheme in Miami. Obviously got paid the big bucks, so he was kind of in a different role. And I just like that he's back in the Bills defense. He's a known commodity, having been in this defense. He knows the scheme. He knows what's expected of him. Same thing from the coach's perspective. But what are your thoughts on Lawson and maybe his role in this season in 2022?
Like you said, it's that edge setter. It's that ability to defend the edge as a run stopper. And I think that's a huge component that we were missing this last year. Obviously, Rousseau was fantastic at it his rookie year. But, Hughes and Addison weren't doing their best in that regard. So it's nice to have this guy back, like you said, out of scheme in Miami. And I think that definitely set him back. Last 2 years, he was hovering around 60% snap share. Combined, he had 7 sacks, 56 total pressures, but also 26 stops in the run game. So you can see that didn't really stop despite the whole scheme stuff. But on this play, you can see that quick first step getting the use as he gets across the face of Dawson Knox, and he just collapses the run gap here. Now, I think people will probably talk about Zach Moss here in the comment section, but you still got to give it to Shaq Lawson here. He comes in, he takes away that edge by getting across of Dawson Knox. Usually you kind of think of someone setting the edge by kind of stacking their defender and walling off them from the outside run. Here he gets decisively inside because he has the filler right behind him. I think that's number 26. And it's just a really decisive move by him to get across the face of an athletic Dawson Knox to collapse that run gap.
Yeah, no, that was a nice play, and I think even his teammate was in the wrong gap. 43 was in the wrong gap. He should have been to the fullback. The other play I wanted to highlight here is this play. Yes, it was against Doyle, but I want you to break down this play from Shaq off the edge here versus Doyle. He's able to get in there on Josh Allen right at the logo.
Yeah, the reason I included it is just because this isn't what you think of when you think of Shaq Lawson. This is one of those areas where, like, this is probably where he needs some work. But seeing that he can do it is always encouraging. You see him hit Doyle with the long arm there, but he also hits him with a bit of dip and bend around the edge. But then he also hits that rip move to keep his body clean and then bend back up towards Josh Allen in the pocket. Really well done, like really technically sound, not something we see a whole lot from Shaq Lawson rushing around the edge like that. He's more of a power rusher in nature, but that was a very nice rep, so I had to include it regardless of who it was against.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Anthony. We talked about who's going to be the disruptor, who's going to be a closer. One thing that Von Miller, and it's something I'm going to cover in his video, one thing that Von Miller has always had a good defensive tackle next to him, but also a rusher on the opposite side that he works incredibly well with. And I'm talking about from, okay, hey, we need to get to the quarterback. Where is he? Where is he setting up in the pocket? I'm going to go high. I'm going to go on the high side, run that arc. I want you to go on the low side. So normally Shaq Lawson would be the power guy, right? Gregory Rousseau would be the power guy. He's going to work through the tackle to the quarterback spot and then hold that spot. And then you're going to have, hypothetically, Von Miller coming, bending off the edge, using his get off, using his speed around the corner to kind of hem the quarterback in, especially those mobile quarterbacks. So this is a nice rep from Shaq Lawson, right, Anthony? Because it does really highlight not only his get off, but his ability to seal that leverage in with the rip and then bend and flatten to the quarterback. It's not something that he's really known for, as Kendall said.
No, I think a lot of people see him as that edge setting, run stopping defender who, if he gives you some sacks, cool. But this is like you said, it's a nice rep when even if you're looking at it in a vacuum on this individual play, it's a nice rep, but then putting it together in tandem with what you could see going forward with a stud on the edge like Von Miller. That's why, pass rushing is so much of a, Erik, we talked about it when we did the breakdown going into the Chiefs game of how to contain Patrick Mahomes. Pass rushing is such a team game at all times, but especially nowadays where you've got so many QBs who can make throws off platform, who can escape, who have maneuverability and good pocket mobility. Like even the guys who aren't the most fleet of foot can still get outside the pocket and make plays off script. So if you got two guys who are both going on that arc and both going around the edge, all the QB has to do is step up and sidestep and vacate out the back door. But if you've got somebody who understands that game and more importantly, understands their role and even more importantly, can execute at it, that's when you're doing, the prototypical 111th, you're doing your job. And whether you get to the QB or you set the QB up for your teammate to make a play, it's a win for the defense as a whole. So that's a really nice rep given what it could mean for the Bills this upcoming year.
Yeah, and I said he's that big end, but he also has versatility on both edges, right and left side. He has kicked inside at times too, so they do have that in their back pocket when it comes to Lawson. But I mean, when I think back to his early career with the Bills, and it's these type of plays. You saw the Knox play where he's penetrating and shooting that inside gap because he has, as Kendall said, that run defender behind him filling the D gap there. But this is what I really remember Shaq Lawson for: the power, the ability to put him in a 6 technique or a 6-eye or just outside the tight end and 7. Like you put him like that and you put him on a tight end, he can drive these guys down, collapse the line of scrimmage, and you see him play through the tight end on this play with that defender, that secondary defender coming off the backside there. He just completely blows this play up, Kendall.
Yeah, there's not much to break down here other than the fact that he's doing what an edge defender has to do. When you're lined up against a tight end, you have to overpower him. And that's what he does here. He runs him into the run gap, and Miles Sanders runs into his blocker because of the drive, the power, the push that Shaq Lawson gets on number 80. So really impressive rep there. And it's exactly like you said, Erik. This is the kind of stuff you think about. It's him stacking that defender. Usually you see him, shedding as he's setting that edge. This is him using that power not to just stack him, but push through him.
Yeah, and again, I think, Gregory Rousseau was one of the top run stoppers in the league last year as a rookie. So when he is in on those early downs, and maybe he's not in a lot of those third downs, hopefully he is and gets more of a shot. But and these early downs, when Rousseau needs a blow and you can bring in a guy like Shaq Lawson and there'll be pretty much no drop off in the run game, that especially with some of the teams that the Bills are going to see this year, it's gonna come in hand this year. And I mean, just clip after clip, you're going to see him just shedding blocks. This is the last one I want to talk about. Again, off the edge there against that tight end set, and you see him just toss the tight end right here, find the ball. You see him track the ball, stack, shed, finish against the run. Just good work there, Anthony, again, against the run by Shaq Lawson.
Yeah, use your hands. Like we keep going back to that joke with Coach Cromer. Hands. Yep, exactly. And that's what Cromer wants from his offensive lineman, but it's important with your defensive line too. Bring your hips, extend, and use your hands and shed. Like what's nice too is he's diagnosing as he's shedding. So it's not just like, okay, let me make contact and see what's happening. Like, he is making forceful contact, reading this play as he's taking on a live blocker, and then just chucks him to the side once he sees where the running back's going to go. And we need more of that on this Bills defensive line. Too many times guys allow offensive linemen to get into their kitchen a little bit and get body on body, and that's how holes are created. And Shaq knows his responsibility. He can set the edge. He can also make a play or two. It's nice to see that stack and shed ability, because it's something that, you know, we could use more of in this defense, given what we have at the second and third levels.
Yeah. Anyone have an answer for Ned here? Justin P asks a question. Why did Miami pay him and not use him? I honestly don't know. I mean, a lot of people like Flores and his defense and his Patriots lineage. And I thought, you know, when we were scouting him and playing against him, I thought that, you know, he was a good force, especially in these run plays. But it's hard to say with the scheme that they employed there. And they didn't really have a pass rush either. So they weren't paying him to be a pass rusher per se. That was one thing I know that Miami struggled with. You guys have anything to add to that?
I was going to say, you also got to take into account, not to kind of like pile on, but the chaos that was going on in Miami. There was a clear disconnect between what Brian Flores and some of the coaching staff wanted versus what some front office people wanted. Obviously, going to the quarterback situation where Flores wanted Herbert and the front office and ownership wanted Tua. So it might be a guy who didn't fit Flores' plan, was wanted by the front office, or vice versa. The execution doesn't match up. And I wouldn't put too much stock into the whys as much as we'd like to know, because there was a lot of chaos going on behind the scenes in Miami, and getting like a solid concrete answer is something that I don't think we're going to know.
So Kendall, Y-Town's King asks, Lawson signing, does it delay Boogie's development? That's a good question, guys, because again, they rotate a lot of guys, but a lot of those guys are young edge players that we want to see develop. We want to see them gain some experience.
In a way, I think it could take away some snaps, but I don't think it delays his development. What I actually think it might accelerate it and kind of give Boogie more of a well-rounded skill set. I think the thing with Boogie is, in year one, I think a lot of people were expecting a little bit more from him. I know you guys differ, but my thing is, he was not what people expected. Those that were thinking positively of Boogie, people were expecting more from him in the run game, and he didn't bring that. He brought high motor, and he brought up that ability to clean up the pocket and get sacks with that high motor. By bringing Shaq Lawson onto the team, I think Boogie Basham was comped to Shaq Lawson so many times. I think hopefully some of that rubs off onto Boogie, and he can learn some of that run stopping nuance and how to use his technique and similar body type to win in that way in the run game. But the reason I don't think it completely like takes away snaps is because I see Boogie this year as what F.A. Obata was last year. I think we're going to use Boogie as the F.A. Obata replacement.
That's a great point, Matt. It's a very good point. And Jason, we have some awesome comments today, guys. Thanks for joining us and adding to the engagement here. Jason Taylor essentially says that, you know, Lawson's not a sack guy, which is correct. So what's different with him? And I kind of touched upon it there before. Again, he's going to help versus the run. But the other part of that is, you know, Von Miller isn't going to be getting 90% of the snaps. They're still going to roll guys, maybe not as often as in the past, especially for Von specifically. But when, you know, Von Miller does come off or whatever, you have other guys that can roll in there and be those edge disruptors. And, you know, we talk about offline, we were talking about Basham's ceiling, or who he really comps to if he reaches, you know, who we think he could. And Anthony made a point that maybe it was Shaq Lawson. Take that for what it is. But in the end, those guys, when it comes to rushing the passer, what are they? They're not guys that are going to win with their speed or their burst or their get off. No, they are hustle guys. They are motor guys. And I think that's what that's the role that those guys will play, whether it's Basham or obviously Boogie or Shaq Lawson when it comes to rushing the passer next year. Anthony, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's a solid piece. And I think that's also where like the expectation comes in for the role. I think, to Jason Taylor's question, the idea of like, why is it different for him, or like people complain about defensive ends not getting sacks and how come maybe that doesn't apply to him. I think people see the impact that he has and understands what he is, and the expectation for him is what he does. I think the expectation is where we see that disconnect. The idea of, if you think Timmy's only going to be a 5-sack guy, when he gets 4.5, you're like, oh, okay, cool. But if you think Timmy's going to be a 10-sack guy and he gets 4.5, you're disappointed. And yeah, I think that comp is solid for Basham, and I don't mean it to sound like a negative, because Shaq Lawson can be a valuable rotational piece. Like you need players like that. Every person on your team as a whole is not flashy, sexy guys. You don't have studs everywhere. You need a bunch of guys who can grind and who can win off of hustle and effort and violence and physicality. Shaq Lawson is one of those players. And if Boogie Basham can develop into one of those guys who can win because on top of having versatility and maybe some other things, I'll take a guy who wins with physicality and violence every single time on my team.
Yeah, and so with McDermott, he always talks about the O-line and D-line needing to control the line of scrimmage and being physical at the point of attack. So I'll wrap up the Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson film by saying that, yes, they wanted to come back to Buffalo. They're obviously welcome back to Buffalo by Bean. But the other thing that's not really talked about, and we're going to talk about it with Von Miller and his impact on these young players along that defensive line and defensive front, but the fact that they are lighter type personalities. They are locker room guys. They're always those rah-rah guys that are pumping other players up and their brothers up in the locker room. And that type of stuff was kind of lost when those guys left town. McDermott is a straight-faced, disciplined type guy. You're probably not getting too many smiles or jokes from him during the week, during practice, in the locker room. You got to have those locker room guys that lighten the mood, that kind of keep guys loose. And especially considering that this locker room has always been a self-sustaining, a self-disciplining type locker room where the guys, the veterans kind of rule each other, rule the locker room. So bringing guys like Jordan Phillips back and Shaq Lawson back, I think does help in that regard and impacts, the locker room and off the field stuff just as much it may as a depth player on the field. So with that said, obviously one guy that is going to make a huge impact across the board is Von Miller, guys. And he's the big game free agent that Bean typically hadn't gone for. But as he said multiple times in different appearances, he needed guys that close the game out, that close a drive out. They went and got him. They're paying a hefty price for him, but they hope that he can not only close games out, but also be the impact, as I said, to those young pass rushers along that defensive front. But there were plenty of options for the Bills, as when you're looking at some of those big names, like you said, Chandler Jones. I know Clowney was still out there. There were some big names as far as edge rushers go, but obviously they wanted a guy with the type of impact on and off the field like Von Miller. Obviously a Hall of Fame player, one of the best to ever play the position when we're talking about from the shoulders up, but also the physical traits that he possessed. And I know he's older and he's gotten, maybe has lost a step, but even with that step he has lost, Kendall, he's still one of the, better, or he's still in the upper echelon of burst and get off and anticipation of the snap off the edge there. And it's just nice to see, Bean say, you know what, we lack this part of the defense, especially in some of those big games. And we could have used a guy like Von Miller to bring down a guy like Patrick Mahomes and some of the quarterbacks they are going to see going forward in the AFC. So it's nice for them to go ahead and say, hey, you know what? It's an arms race. We have our offense. Our defense is number one last year. But guess what? There's one little niche that we need to augment. And that guy was filled with a splash signing in Von Miller.
Yeah, I mean, it's a home run. I think a lot of people obviously had their qualms with, the sticker price of it and the fact that he's 32, probably turning 33 in like a couple days now, actually. But I mean, the dude at his age 32 season, coming off of an injury, playing for two different teams, he had 13 sacks, 82 total pressures, and a 20.4% pass rush win rate, all of which are within the top 10 when you're filtering based on 50% of qualifying snaps for the edge rushing position. So, I mean, the dude still has it. And I made comments in the past about, like, right as this happened, I think it was on Disguised Coverage, and I said, I'm kind of curious how he's going to age, because I feel like, edge rushers don't necessarily age gracefully because you need to be athletic for that position. But then I've obviously marinated in that thought for some time, and now I'm thinking about it, and it's like, this dude has technique for days. Like,
Yes.
if you lack athleticism on your tail end, that technique will help you through. So I think that's a huge component for this, not only for him, but also what he's going to transfer to the young guys in the group.
Yeah, Anthony, one thing I brought up, he's that big, big game type player, whether it's you're talking the Super Bowl, but postseason. We're looking at some of the postseason pass rushing productivity stats from PFF, and I have included the Rams and the Bills to give you an idea on Von Miller and the postseason he had. In the postseason, 4 sacks, 2 QB hits, 16 QB hurries, 11.7 pass rush productivity rate, and number 2 is Jerry Hughes at 11.5, but we won't talk about that. But so Von Miller, big game player. He always comes through when they need him as a pass rusher, as a run stopper. That is definitely the type of player they need in the playoffs, but also to help develop those young pass rushers.
It's something that Kendall and I talked about last week, and Erik, you and I were talking about a little today on Twitter. Like, the idea of who and what Von Miller is he is a professional rusher of the quarterback. Like, he is leading pass rushing summits in the offseason. And those aren't like jokes. Like, he's leading the edge version of Tight End University that's run by George Kittle and Travis Kelce that everybody likes to talk about. Like, he is teaching some of the best of the best. Like, and it's just the way he approaches the game. He is that prototypical person who's honed his craft. So he is that guy who you want to learn from if you're a young guy, because he can teach you technique and in-game things, but also the type of person who will teach you, I don't know, maybe things about your diet, things on how to practice, things on what to do in the offseason. It's been talked about so many times how Terrell Owens' game changed once he attached himself to Jerry Rice. And he started working out with Jerry Rice in the offseason, and his game took that next jump. Like, that's the type of potential you have with this Bills roster because of the young guys they have on the edge. You bring in a legitimate Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever do it at the position, someone who is gifted physically, but who can also win with his mind. Erik, you put down a couple clips last week showing like moves that Von Miller does in like the first and second quarter, and then goes for that again in the fourth, only to do something completely different. He sets you up on that outside, and then in the fourth, when the tackle's like, okay, here comes the outside rush, he's like, nope, dip inside, and he's completely clean. Yeah. He plays those Jedi mind tricks with the offensive line, and that comes from his ability of honing his craft. And I think that's the good thing when you're talking about, his age and what his contract goes into. And again, with that contract piece, Chandler Jones signed for the same AAV. The only difference is he basically has 2 guaranteed years. Von has 3. And as much as this position doesn't necessarily age gracefully, because he's able to win with technique and win with his mind just as much as he is physically, once his physical skills start to diminish, he'll still be able to keep rolling. Much like Kendall, the example we talked about last week, when a pitcher can't throw 98 and 99 anymore, and he can only throw 92 and 93 with the fastball, he can still be effective because he has a changeup, he has a slider, and he has control of his pitches. That's Von Miller. That head ability and that technique that he possesses is going to be in him. And if he can translate that and transpose some of it to the young guys and allow them to operate on that level, that's something that can go for the future. If Rousseau and Basham and Epinesa can learn from one of the best and then take their game up, then you have a domino effect of production just off of one guy, and that's well worth any amount of money.
Right. And as you guys said, that the amount of tools he has in the toolbox is unlike many guys in the league. There's maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 guys that have the arsenal of pass rush moves, aside from the shoulders up, aside from that football IQ and reading, stances, formations, things like that we're going to talk about here in a second. And that's why I agree. I don't think the aging thing, he's going to age well. He's going to age like a fine wine. Yes, the foundation of his game has always been his burst and his up the field presence, his speed, his 4.4 speed. But people don't realize that, yes, that is the foundation of his game. He will attack up the field.
That's good.
And then, go to different moves from there. I like that. Greg Maddux in football. I like that.
That's exactly who I was thinking of in my mind as I said it. So that's so
100%. I totally agree. But, as his speed and burst are on the decline, which they are, you see it. The other things he can go to is just so good. His next big move is it's going from speed to power. That long arm, you guys got to remember, he may have played outside linebacker majority of his career, and in that 2-point stance versus the 3, like the Bills like the generally play, he's got 33.5-inch arms. So that long arm, like out of those 28 minutes of clips that I cut up, I'd say a good, 20% are speed to power long arms, and he's just driving tackles from either side, the right or the left side, into the quarterback. And he's got so much there. And as you guys said, it'll translate to guys, in the locker room. And we're going to take a look at, what he can bring to the locker room and what he can bring, to the field. Because as Anthony said, he hosts a pass rush summit, much like, the tight end university. You have OL masterminds, the offensive line masterminds by Duke Manoweather. Like, this is becoming a thing where all of these guys at the same position get together, talk craft. We always talk about the cool clinic, which is the offensive line clinic for coaches. This is becoming a thing where guys from different teams are sharing, tricks of the trade and refining their craft in the offseason. And we saw what it did for Dawson Knox, as you guys mentioned. And I just think it will translate. And so this is Von Miller talking at his pass rush summit. And he's talking about, reading the offensive linemen, reading the centers, the quarterbacks, and getting clues and collecting information prior to the snap to help him with his jump, to help him with his anticipation off the snap. So listen in, and then we'll take a look at a play that really kind of shows that.
I like to get as many clues as I can to get a great jump. Some quarterbacks will be under center, and before they get ready to come out, his heels up first. Right when he get his heels up, I'm going. Some centers, when they down, to hike the ball, they so big that they got their heels coming up and they hiking and getting out of it. The guard or the tackle will be like this, or look like this.
So you heard him talk about that. And here's a play here to the top of the screen. You're going to see him off the edge against Brady. He gets to Brady in 2.1 seconds. And that's because he's reading the offensive lineman. He's watching the snap. You see him right here off the edge, speed move outside here. But watch what he's doing. And in this game, the right tackle right here was the backup. And he came in the game. And as you're going to hear me talk about in the video, the Rams run a lot of these wide alignments. They like to have Von Miller, Leonard Floyd out wide, force those tackles to not only worry about, getting vertically to and beating Miller to the edge, but also they have to close that gap out this way. So it really stresses these tackles. And so what this right tackle was doing, we saw it a bunch of times this year, and some of the Bills do it at times, is you're going to see the right tackle kind of get out of his stance before the ball is even snapped. And Von Miller picked up on it, and he's reading him. And you see that first movement from this guy right here. Watch the movement by Von Miller at the top of the screen. You see him already moving. And so as I play it in slow motion, by the time Brady gets the ball, because Von Miller had anticipated it so well, look how much further up the field he is.
Seriously.
Look how much further up the field he is. And he's playing against a pretty damn good left tackle. Donovan Smith was rated 11th overall in pass blocking efficiency last year for the Buccaneers. He's a damn good tackle. And the anticipation of that snap, some of those things that you heard Von Miller talk about in that summit were put to work right here on this play. And although Brady gets rid of the ball, he gets there in 2.1 seconds. I don't think the Bills had a guy that could get to the quarterback in 2.1 seconds. And we're talking about Jerry Hughes, who actually does a decent job of anticipating the snap most times. AJ Epinesa has been and has improved in this area, but it's something I'm going to talk about in this video, guys, is yes, you may be able to get jump off the ball. You may be Epinesa coming into the league was more of a power guy, lost that weight. Now he's more of a get off guy, but there's two factors to getting off the ball. One of them is the physical. Hey, you have that explosion, which Epinesa had improved in that area. But as I'll show in the video later on, he doesn't have the anticipation. And I think Von Miller, guys, will add that and will help these guys identify some of those clues that he talked about in the pass rush summit, Anthony.
Yeah, that's some part of the mental side of it and the technique side of it. There's so many little clues and things, and We talked about it with, we were talking about the Bills offense earlier in terms of like tendency and trying not to like give away certain things. You're always looking for tendencies. You're always looking for something you can spot pre-snap to help you identify whether it's a coverage, whether it's an alignment, whether it's something as small as like Von Miller talking about this guy is going to be, his heels are going to be off the ground or they're going to be on, or this time cluing into the right tackle. Teaching those guys those things in film study, in preparation for the week, making it a regular part of their regimen. Again, that's a huge piece. You're now winning mentally in addition to the physical ability you've already got. And if that can translate to the young guys, it's amazing. But the fact that it's already ingrained into Von Miller, again, it's part of the reason why he wins. I think a lot of people just talk about the bend or the quickness or the athleticism or the ankle flexion, but it's all of it. And here he is, again, Jedi mind tricking this offense and then putting it together with his physical ability. And like, how do you stop that? And then if you can teach other players to operate like that, how do you stop them? And it's just the gift that keeps on giving. It's really exciting to add somebody of his caliber, given what he can do with his body and then with his mind.
Yeah, Kendall, you see the right tackle moving, but you can also see Brady kind of clenching, waiting for that snap, and the center doesn't even snap it quite yet. So I love this, this part of the game that, it takes a lot of film study to kind of pick up on some of these things, but to be in the game for Von Miller and to pick up on stuff like this, man, like this is priceless type stuff from Von Miller.
Yeah, this is literally next level stuff. This is why you pay him the amount of money that you pay him and hope that beyond his time here, it trickles down to these young guys. This knowledge, the mental side of things, the money that you spent on Von Miller then trickles down in value to AJ Epinesa, to Greg Rousseau, to Boogie Basham. And then those guys have the knowledge to pass on to the next generation of Bills edge rushers. That's the value that you're getting from this, 3-year, $53 million contract that we have given to Von Miller. It's beyond the value of the 3 years. And that's what's so exciting about it. Obviously, we're all excited about what it means for the next 3 years, but it could pay off beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's going to be in the locker room with these guys. He's going to be in the film room with these guys. He's going to be watching film, pointing out these tells. I mean, it's essentially a pass rush summit in the film room, in the locker room with these pass rushers, these young pass rushers and Von Miller every single day. I'm sorry, that to me is super exciting and probably one of the underrated things that not many people are talking about when it comes to him. And I'll end this portion of this play. We have one more on Von Miller with this quote from him. And he said it in his presser. He said he's two things. He's a damn good pass rusher. He knows how to get to the quarterback and finish. His second best trait that he brings to the team is being a teammate. He said, when it comes to being a great teammate and bringing the best out of your brother, I'm one of the best to ever do that. And I can toot my own horn in that aspect. And he's not typically a guy that brags a lot. He bragged about that. And we can see that right there on that play. And that's what's going to be fun for the Bills defense. And I do think, and it's something I'll talk about in the film room video, the Bills are going to have to probably tweak a few things for Von Miller. He says he usually plays in the 243, 245 range. Obviously, the Bills typically have bigger defensive ends. I think they'll have to kind of tweak their scheme just a little bit, maybe bump him outside a little wider like they do here with the Rams. But here's another play against the Bucs. And I picked this game, one, because it's the playoffs, but it was also a game that he led the Rams in pressures. He had 10 pressures in this game against this offensive line, against a really good tackle in Smith, and obviously against one of the best players to ever play the game in Tom Brady. He led with 10. Donald had 8 in this game. And now, of course, they complement each other rather well. And I hope, and we hope, that he's able to do things like this and complement Ed Oliver in this regard. But watch Oliver off the edge here. He's processing run the pass right here. That's why you see him go hands-on with Smith right there. And once he realizes that it is a pass, look at him work the edge here. But more importantly, yeah, he may be going on, 32, going on 33, but look at that bend right there through contact. He runs the arc, and then you see Brady kind of climb the pocket a little bit. And Von Miller doesn't just go and bring the quarterback down. He always talks about it. He goes for the ball. He says, that's my ball. This is the trifecta. This is the game-changing play. And he's able to strip Brady here and watch it from this other angle and his bend around the corner here. Look at the big tackle leaning on him and he's able to withstand that force and that pressure with that lower body strength right there, and then retrace up the pocket, had the mindset to go for the ball. I mean,
Look at the ankle flexion.
Yeah, this is exciting stuff from him, Kendall.
Yeah, like you said, and that ankle flexion, that bend, all the weight he's putting on that right foot, it's really incredible. The body control he has going around that edge. Yeah, I don't understand how humans can wear that much weight on one foot, but my God, it's impressive. And then obviously the finishing aspect to it, he talked about it, and he's talked about it multiple times. He doesn't care about sacks. When he sees a sack opportunity, he sees an opportunity to create a turnover, not a sack, not a negative play. He sees an opportunity to change possession, and that is so valuable. We all talk about the argument between sacks versus pressures. What about turnovers versus sacks? Like this dude, oh my God, it's just so exciting, the prospects of what we could be getting from him this year and for the next 3 years. He's just a next level pass rusher and a next level mind to add to this locker room.
Yeah, he's gonna be. I'll call our shot right now. He's gonna be a guy that we're gonna be looking at in the film room a bunch this season. There's just you can't you cannot ignore his film. Like, he just pops everywhere, and again, that bend, even at his age, everyone talks about he's losing a step, but to still have this strength to turn that corner there, Anthony, is pretty impressive.
The core strength that you have to have when you have a 320 pound plus offensive tackle leaning on you and pushing on you, and you have the core strength to withstand it, then the lower body turn. Like, look at Von Miller's positioning there. He looks like one of those like toys from the 90s where you could like twist their torso around, because it was just on like a little spindle in the middle. Like, his core strength, and then his lower body strength, the ankle flexion, the athleticism, the hand usage to be able to shake through and then reestablish himself and get right to the ball, the hand-eye coordination, all of it. Like, that's why he's one of the best edge rushers of all time and in the entire game right now. It's why when the Rams acquired him, their Super Bowl odds shot up and everybody said, oh my God, how do you handle Von Miller and Aaron Donald up front? He adds something to this Bills defensive line, which, if you put it in basketball terms, he's a guy who can just go out and get you a bucket. You don't have to run screens and scheme up a bunch of stuff for him to get a shot in the corner. You just give him the ball and you say, yo, we need 2 points. Like, just go get a bucket. And he's like, okay. And he straps on his helmet and he goes and gets you a bucket. Like, that's huge. The Bills have that on offense with Josh Allen, and they have it with Stephon Diggs. And now they've got it. That is funny from Michael. The in-season film rooms are going to turn into the Allen.
He knows.
Show.
He knows. Michael tunes in every week. He knows.
Yeah, he knows. He knows the tendencies. He knows what it's going to be. And that's what it is. Like, it's a dude who can get you a bucket. Like, you don't have to scheme and play games with Von Miller. Just be like, yo, just go cause havoc. Just go pressure the QB. Just go get the ball. He'll be like, okay. Like, that's it. He gets you a bucket. The Bills didn't have that up front. They got a stud on the back end with Tre'Davious White. That's also part of it too, right? Like, the Bills have one of the best players in the world at their position on defense already in Tre'Davious White. Now you have one on the front end. You have 2 elite players on this Bills defense who are also willing to do their 111th, who are also willing to play team defense, who are also willing to function within the team. That's huge in and of itself, but you've got elite guys. And then you've also got high floor and still some high ceiling guys. Like, we haven't even gotten to the fact that you still have 2 all-pro safeties. You have 2 really good coverage linebackers. You have a budding defensive tackle stud in Ed Oliver, whose game will also probably open up now, potentially, hopefully, with Von Miller. All these potential domino effects. But forget all that for now. You have a stud and a star on your defensive line to go with the stars you have on the back end already. Man, it's a huge piece for what he means for this defense and for this team as a whole. Like, that's a big time move.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, they were the number 1 defense last year. And
some people think that was a fluke, though.
Yeah. You can look at it on the film. You can look at it in the advanced stats, and you'd be proven wrong. It's just mind-boggling that they were able to add a guy like this, somehow fit him into the cap, and then add, again, some of those compliments to attack the quarterback. And Bean's not messing around, guys.
It's all because
JD
J.D. McKissick went back to Washington and pissed Bean off, and he was like, "Okay, fine. You know what? Fine. I'm getting Von Miller."
Yeah, right. No, that was a good, fun film room. We're gonna have plenty of these every week in the off season and leading into the draft, and then of course once the season starts. With that said, thanks to everyone for joining us this week, and we'll start with you, Anthony. Workhorse number 1. What you got going on this week? What shows? What times? What appearances? How much you charging? What you got going on, brother?
Depends on whose show I'm on and how much I charge. And I charge a variety of things. Sometimes I'll charge money. Sometimes the deed to your house. Sometimes I like to do like Rumpelstiltskin type stuff, and I'll just like take your firstborn. Depends on really what I'm feeling for the week. But hey, man, you got to do what you got to do in this industry. It's a tough racket. Tomorrow, we hosting Disguise Coverage live at 7 p.m. Eastern. I will be joined by one of the best in the business, Mr. Russell Brown, and we're going to be previewing this entire wide receiver draft class, top to bottom, who's at the top, how this class rounds out overall, round 1, round 2, or day 1, day 2, day 3, who fits the Bills' needs as well from a player profile perspective. So we're going to be diagramming and breaking down that entire draft class, and then I'll be joining Russ and Mr. Rich Haynes Thursday on the Cover One Draft Show as we do a mock draft for the entire first round, which I'm very excited for as well. And then I'm looking to finally beat Assassin's Creed Valhalla this weekend. That's on the
Where do you even
docket.
find the time, honestly?
Hey, dude, it's real tough now. It's real tough. My video game playing has taken a big hit. You'll also find me in the kitchen. I got to clean the kitchen this weekend. I got to clean one of the bathrooms as well. So it's a busy weekend for the Workhorse, but yeah, that's where I'll be.
All of that, but not take down the Christmas tree that's in the back.
You know it's on purpose. That's part of who I am. It always stays. That's such a
Hey,
thing.
we didn't have a reference yet, so I just wanted to add it to the conversation to let everyone know it's normal, and so that when they watch the end of the show and they go into the comments after the show and the rewatch, they don't say, "What the hell? He didn't take his Christmas tree down." But
thank you.
Most of you guys join us every week, so you know the deal, whether it's in the film room or on Disguise Coverage. With that said, Kendall, man, you've been, again, I said it, you're workhorse number 2 at Cover One. You've been a great addition in the film room for the Bills guys at Air Raid Hour. You do a lot for Cover One, and we're glad to have you. So let everyone know what appearances you've had in the last couple of days and what you got going on this week.
So I gotta preface this. You're calling me workhorse number 2. This is going to sound nutty how I'm going to explain what's coming up, because it's going to sound like I'm literally Ant's younger brother. Right?
Oh, boy.
All right. So tomorrow I'm doing nothing. I got a day off, which is nice. But that means I get some time to watch film and also play some video games. I jumped into Assassin's Creed Odyssey literally 3 days ago.
Taking it back. I like it. I
hadn't played it. So it's so funny that you just said that.
Hilarious.
And then
I love this, dude.
on Thursday on the Air Raid Hour, we're doing our own wide receiver show. So everyone at Cover One, strap in, buckle up. We're going to be breaking down wide receivers apparently this week. So we're going to be doing a very similar thing where we're going to kind of project the rounds for when receivers are going to go, and then kind of give our thoughts on who we like in those rounds, stuff like that. Yeah, really just check me out on Twitter though. For the rest of the week, I'm just going to be posting random clips. I'm going to try to be honing up on interior offensive linemen, because I believe that is the show after that for the Air Raid Hour. That's the group that we're going to be covering after wide receivers next on the Air Raid Hour. So yeah, busy week. Apparently I am workhorse number 2, younger brother to, and it's wild how it just keeps on going. Number 2.
Kevin, our boy Kevin says number 2. I love it. Yeah. So as I said throughout the show, I've been working on Von Miller's video for later in the week. I got a couple of guests coming on for that, doing some audio. I'm going to match up with some of the video from his film with the Broncos and the Rams. How the Bills will use him this coming year. So be on the lookout for that later in the week, maybe even on the weekend. I'm not going to rush that one. There's a lot of footage to go through. So with that said, thanks for joining us in the film room again. And on behalf of Anthony Prohaska, Kendall Mursky, I'm Erik Turner. We'll see you next week.